next one, depending on how many you're going to be serving, if you're just going by this recipe, just doing it for about 4 people, you can do this by hand. If you're going to do this for a larger group, you may want to get a hand shredder or something like that, because it will wear your arm out trying to cut up all of this. Okay. First thing we're going to do, go ahead and get the wilted leaves off from the outside of the red cabbage, which I've already peeled most of that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and set a large mixing bowl up here. Now you want to cut this pretty thin. This is where I was saying, having an electric shredder would help a lot for this, especially if you're doing larger amounts. And some people, a little intimidated when trying to shave it, kind of small with a knife. So if you have a hard time using a knife and afraid of cutting yourself, go ahead and get electric one. So I've all told you how my sister already did that with her one time. I gave her some knives. Okay, just break that all up. Now, of course, all the ingredients, once you add it to here, it's going to have a slightly reddish tint because of the red cabbage, but that's okay. And you'll see why, because that'll really add to the autumn feel to it. All right, pull out that center and seeds. Go ahead and devein it. And basically cutting that almost into a julienne style. Now the only reason we're using an orange is simply because for the color effect. It has nothing to do with the flavor. And the reason I don't recommend a red, because you already have the red cabbage, so having the orange, or even if you want to use a yellow bell pepper, that looks really good. You're going to get the same flavor regardless. Okay. Now apples, it just depends either what you have on hand or what your own personal preference is. I'm using Golden Delicious for this one. The other one that I pre-made, I use Golden Delicious and Gala apples. So it depends on what you have in season or what your own preference is, or if you have your own apple tree, feel free to use those. But this one, you do not peel it. And you're going to cut this pretty thin. Like so. And then kind of lay it sideways a little bit there and just trimming it all down. Basically where everything's about like a matchstick in width. Okay. And you can use a little bit of red skin apples, a little bit of yellow, just kind of alternate a little bit, adding in some different colors. And if you plan on letting this sit out for any amount of time, this is where that calls for that lemon juice. You'd want to throw your apples into the lemon juice at this point. Go ahead and soak them real good and then drain them real good too before you put it in to the mix. Okay, and I'm just using a regular Anjou Pear. Of course, you can use Asian Pear if you want, or anything of your preference. Once again, do not skin it though. And cut the same way as the apple. And a lot of times you'll come across recipes that says Asian Pear Slaw. This is very similar to it. The only difference, of course, we're adding apples, and the dressing that we're using is different. Okay. Alright. And just toss that in there. And the pears too, like I say, if you're going to have this sit out for a while, you'd want to throw them into the lemon juice. As you can already see, it's starting to get a lot of color to it. And that's one of the main things you want to do. Sometimes you get some larger pieces, just break those up there. Okay. Now we're going to cut some fresh cilantro. You don't need to cut it too fine, but try not to leave too big of a leaf there. You don't want to leave a whole leaf. Okay. Alright. Let's mix all that stuff up there. And so we're going to get a separate bowl to do the dressing in. Change up my gloves here. Okay. Start off with a little apple cider. Actually, cider vinegar, I should say. Got about an eighth a cup. Now you could use white vinegar if you wanted to for that. It's going to be a little bit sharper, and it kind of contrasts, but not enough that you would really notice. But if you just happen to have it's just white available, go ahead and use that. You could even use red wine vinegar for it too. It'll give you a slightly different taste, more of a twang to it. I was telling you about the balsamic goes really good with it. I was telling you about the Asian Slaw. It actually uses the red wine vinegar in it. Okay. Grab us some mayonnaise. Need about a cup. Of course, you know how I am about measuring. Unless I'm baking, I just basically eye it. Okay. Alright. Put in some honey. Need about a fourth a cup. Let's see. Find my cinnamon here. Oh, there it is. Now, I like a little extra black pepper than salt in this because it helps enhance the flavor a little bit more. Okay. And then we're going to add a few scallions into the mix. Now I always put the scallions in with the dressing on this. I could cut it up and put it into the slaw mix if I wanted to, but you run the risk of getting just a large clump of the scallions that way. By putting in the dressing, when you toss it, it causes it to adhere, to the rest of the mix in here, but it helps to separate it, so you don't get, that large collection of the onion flavor. And you do want to cut this up pretty fine. Okay. Just throw that in there. Go ahead and throw that into the mix. Now you want to let this chill for at least a half an hour. That'll give it time to kind of cool down, and also for the flavors to incorporate, thoroughly throughout it. Okay. Now as you mix it, it'll still maintain, the white color from the dressing. But as you'll see here in a second, once you let it set, it will start, the red cabbage will start bleeding out into it. Set this back here a second. And then you get that autumn look that I was telling you about. And this is why I was saying using the orange bell peppers, because they kind of glow in with the rest of it. Because the white meat part of the apples and the pears really soaks in not just the color, but the flavor of that. And that's what really makes this dish. And like I said, it has the look, but also, just the feel and taste of autumn when you think of that.